Shalom, Yahweh Hashem Yahushua Barakatam, Yahweh Shemar Hashem Yahushua. This is the ISUK that started out at 1 West, 125th Street, Harlem, New York in 1969. We're under commanding General Yohana. And we're here to teach the truth of the Bible to so-called Black, Hispanic, and Native American Indians are the real Israelites according to the scriptures. It is, of course, the Lashawan Qadash, the Friday Lashawan Qadash class. And in this class, what we aim to do is to further extend our vocabulary and understanding of the ancient language of Hebrew, the Lashawan Qadash, which is the holy tongue. This is the tongue that has been given to us thousands of years ago by the Most High. You understand? So what we're doing is we're coming in here and we're breaking down scriptures. We're getting vocabulary. We see that on the board we have what we had from a few weeks ago. You understand? A few weeks ago we had this. We'll do a recap on this before we get into today's topic and today's precepts. You understand? So let's go ahead and jump straight into it. We got quite a bit to cover today. But from what we see already, like I said, we got some vocabulary to go over. The vocabulary words that we recapped last class was armies, which is Tazaba'ah, Mawa'aba, which is Moab, aka the Chinese. Okay, this is quite important, especially in today's landscape for the geopolitical events that are happening across the globe right now. We got Mataza war, which means to fortify or to siege. Okay, now we have Naka, which means to lead or to guide. Okay, keep those in mind. Those vocabulary words are used in these precepts that we are about to cover. And so it begins as this. This is Psalm chapter 60 and verse 8. We'll do a quick breakdown of what this scripture is talking about. But of course, reading it in the Hebrew is the priority. So let's go ahead and read it in the Hebrew first. Being able to see it in the ancient Hebrew and reading it in the ancient Hebrew is a blessing. You understand that for thousands of years, our people have not been able to look at this language and see it and read it and understand it. But now we, because the Most High's grace, have come back to our culture. And so now we can look at these characters and we can understand them once again. So it is an honor of mine to teach these classes because it is a step towards the kingdom. You understand? And so just from reading the Hebrew, this is a good opportunity for you to practice reading the Hebrew, understanding more vocabulary words. For those of you that are locked in with these classes, make sure to type in the chat to gain recognition for attendance today. And I highly recommend getting a notebook or at least a dedicated spiral notebook if you attend these classes quite often, and of course a pencil so that you can write these down. Okay, that's the best way to learn.
What's up, blood?
Hey, Shalom Christ, sir. I started like 10. And so we're starting off this class today with verse 8. Okay, I'm recapping this real quick. It says, Mawa'aba Sayar Rakatazaya Al Adawam. And what we said was Moab is the Most High's pot or cauldron in his wash bowl. Over Edom, he had just left. Oh, God. Mawa'aba Sayar Rakatazaya Al Adawam. So Moab is the Most High's pot or cauldron. Now, the thing that a pot is used for is for multiple things. A pot or a cauldron can be used to keep items in, but also to grow things in, right? A vase can be used to basically to grow plants. But the actual word sayar, while it also means pot and cauldron, also means thorn. And this is quite interesting to me because when I read this about Moab is as if they are a thorn on the planet, because thorns, they grow in abundance almost to the point of being a nuisance. Okay, because they grow just without any kind of, left unchecked, they grow to a very large number. This is exactly what Moab has done. At the same time, the Most High is referring to them as a wash bowl, which is something that is used to purge things from, or a bathtub that absorbs all the filth from everything. And so Moab is quite honestly a nation of people. The Chinese are a nation of people that grow very high in number and have very dirty living conditions. Okay, that is of course biblical. There's nothing about that doesn't line right up with who we say that they are. Biblically, Moab are the Chinese. Okay, Mawa'aba. If you go down to the vocabulary word, Mawa'aba is one of the vocabulary words that we teach. Okay, not only is it on the officer's test, it is one of the 18 nations, and it literally means from the mother's father. From the mother's father, which is quite interesting. I believe that Moab was the firstborn, Ammon was the secondborn. Well, they're both basically born around the same time, either way, but because they were both birth of daughters of a man named Lot. Okay. Now, the thing about that is strange. The thing about that is strange is that Moab, because he basically was birth of his mother's father, meaning that his mother and his mother's father had slept together to be birth to him. So this is actually a name of somebody that means incest. Moab literally, by its definition, means incest. You understand? Mawa'aba. And so that's the Chinese. That's exactly why they have you could call it a deformity, but it is a genetic alteration that has happened because of what was done all those years ago. The same thing goes with the Japanese, very similar situation. They don't look like anybody else on the planet, and that is biblical. So Mawa'aba Sayar Rakat Tazaya Al Adawam Shalayak Shalayak. I will cast. I will cast. Now, when you say I will cast, you're saying I will cast my shoe. It's na'alia. Na'alia. Those of you brothers and sisters out there that have 1,000 pairs of shoes, it's a Hebrew word for you right here. It's called na'alia, my shoe. Now, na'al would be the root word. You see how I have it bracketed here? It's bracketed because it is the root word of shoe, where Yah is added as a possessive adjective at the end, so that when it's used in a sentence, it means my shoe. So na'aliyah is my shoe, but the word na'al means shoe by itself. It says, over Edom will I cast my shoe. The Most High is saying, I will step over Edom. We're saying cast your shoe. Think about like if you're walking down a path and you see something that you don't want to step in, maybe it looks like mud, maybe it's like an ant pile or something like that. You cast your shoe over it when you take a giant step. Okay, so that's what the Most High is saying. So he's talking about Moab being a thorn that grows in great number with terrible living conditions. Basically, they all of China is like as if it is like a wash bowl. If you look at China, it is literally cluttered with some of the worst air pollution on the planet. You understand? That's unfortunately China, especially in their dense populated cities, which they have over 1 billion people that live there. So there's quite a few people that live there. Over Edom will I cast my shoe. The Most High is saying, over Edom will I cast my shoe. It says, because of me, Philistia will shout in triumph. It says, Aliyah, Palashath, Ha-tha-ra'ai ayah. Ha-tha-ra'ai ayah. Ha-tha-ra'ai ayah. If you'll notice, a lot of our Lashawan Qadash language, it sounds Native American because Native American language derives from Hebrew at one point in time or another. Of course, tongues change over the generations, over the hundreds of years of separation from our people from our ancient land. But we found this language on this side of the globe that predates 700 BC, or at least 500 BC. And so we know that this language does have its roots in here in the Americas with the indigenous population, but also, of course, in the land of Israel where it derives from. So the whole entire verse 8 is Moab is the Most High's pot and cauldron and wash bowl, and over Edom will I cast my shoe. Because of me, Philistia will shout in triumph. Okay, when you look at that in the there's another verse, I forget exactly, I think it's also in Psalms. When you read this, it says, because of me, we will Philistia will be taken over, is what it's saying. It says Philistia will shout in triumph. It's because the land is being taken over from the Philistines. Now, it has nothing to do with what's going on today, because what's happening today is not biblical. Well, in the sense of the children of Israel returning home and taking back their homeland. That is not what's happening in the Gaza Strip and things like that. So we'll, of course, talk about that more in depth today with one of the verses that we're going to be bringing out that will further explain that phenomena of expansion that's been going on over there. Let's read it in the Hebrew. Total of verse 8. Mawa'aba sayar rachatazaya al arawam a shalayak na alia palashas hatha ra'aya. Okay. Now we're going to go to verse 9. I'm kind of breaking in. We'll go ahead and start going through the verse a little bit quicker, because the recap, we don't want the recap to take the full amount of the class. We definitely have some more exciting scriptures to go over today. So I want to make sure that we start getting to that basically as soon as we can. Let me make sure I got a good marker for when we start writing the new stuff. Either one of these should work just fine. Verse 9. Maya la balanya ayara or ayar ma tazawar Maya Nathanya I Adawam. And verse 9, it starts to focus a little bit more on Edom, where it says, who will bring me to the city of strength? Who will lead or guide me to Edom? Now, what is it that it's saying? Well, the Most High just got through saying in verse 8 that he would cast his shoe over Edom, meaning he's going to step over Edom. And it's very important that you understand that, because the rest of the world will never be able to completely understand why that scripture mentions Moab, Edom, and Philistia all in one very quick verse. Because the Most High is not on the side of the Chinese. He's not on the side of the Europeans that rule over the land of the Middle East in these days through force and through all types of different acts and deception. But then on top of that, you also have what's going on in Philistia, which is, of course, in that land very well. And so what you have to see here is when he's asking, who will bring me to the city of strength? Who will guide me to Edom? He's asking who's gonna set the path for him for that to be cast over, for Edom to be stepped over. Okay. Why is that important? Because the world landscape, as you see it right now, there are people that are in power. The Most High is stating that they will be taken out of power. And so it's very interesting to see that, because those that assume that they are in the catbird seat to rule and to have dominion over the earth, the Most High has other plans for them. That's why it's important for Black, Hispanic, and Native American Indians to come back to their culture in preparation for when the Most High makes that move for those things to happen. He wants Black, Hispanics, and Native Americans to be a part of that process. And that's why those that are leaders amongst our people are asking, who's going to guide us to that point? Verse 10 starts to clarify who it is. But let's read verse 9 in the Hebrew one more time. Maya, ya balanya, ayara, or ayar, ma tazawar, maya, nathanya, I, adawam. Adawam is Edom, okay, which means red. or wasted away. Shasha means wasted away. Ha is it not ata alahayim za nachath nawa za nachath nawa. Now again, if any of these characters seem quite a bit for you, definitely take the time, especially go to the class where we break this down word for word, because we will break it down word for word in the classes that we prioritize it. Again, we're just doing the recap. But if you need to refer to the alphabet, we got the whole alphabet right here. You're pretty much going to be using the one on the left for our classes, while as the ones on the right are characters that you will see during the Sabbath service for those that read along with us, especially my officers and troopers and young men that are under me, whose my job it is to prepare to be able to read during the Sabbath service in a serviceable manner and in a decent speed while they continue to improve. It is important to know both. We have to know both. But this is our home. This is our derivative language right here. So I always want to focus on the ancient Hebrew as much as possible as well. So again, verse 10, hala'ah ata alahayim nachath nawa wala'ah ta taza'ah alahayim ba tazaba'ah wath yanawa ba tazaba'ah wath yanawa. That's a long phrase right there, but that finishes out verse 10. And what it said is it not you, God, who casted away us and not did go out with our armies? What is it that he's saying right here? He's setting up a scenario where he's bringing up an event where the Most High was not with us. When he's asking right here, who will bring me to the strong city? Who will guide me to Edom? He's remembering the failures of the past. He's acknowledging the failure of the past in verse 10, where he's saying, is it not you, God, who casted us away and did not go out with our armies? There must have been a time where Israel and the Black, Hispanic, and Native Americans were not keeping God's law, statutes, and commandments. So the Most High's protection was not with us. And when the Most High's protection is not with us, armies of Edom, armies of the other nations, Moab, all the other heathen that were round about Israel in the ancient times were able to be successful in their warfare over us. Those are things that we want to avoid. And the reason why we want to avoid that as much as all possible is so that when the time comes for us to actually have our armies again, that we are successful in them. In our spiritual warfare, even here in America today, we have success in our ability to go out and teach, to go out and speak amongst the people in the public without any police coming against us, without any demons that are on people coming against us that can affect us and prevent us from doing the work of the Lord. That is because we step out there with the Most High with us. But we have to also acknowledge our history. We have to acknowledge our mistakes so that we don't make those same mistakes. Let's go ahead and read verse 10 one more time, and then we'll finish up with the last verse before we get into today's lesson. So again, it's hala'ah ata alahayim za nachath nawa wala'ah ta taza'ah alahayim ma tab slugget ba tazaba'ah wath yanawa. All right. And so now we got verse 11. Verse 11 is just clarifying furthermore of what we were saying about verse 10, and that when the Most High is not with us, we don't find success in our warfare. And so verse 11 is saying, give to us help from distress, for it is vanity, the help of man. And so this goes all the way back to verse 9, where the question is being asked, who will bring me to the strong city? Who will guide, who will lead me to Edom? We're not going to fight against the white man with the help of mankind, with the technology of mankind, with the power and capability of mankind. Only through the help of the Most High can those things be done, because when we understand the scriptures enough, it is the Most High that put Edom over us in a time frame where we were not following God's laws. So the only way for us to have him removed from our path is to actually come back to our heritage. Even something as simple as learning his language is us returning back to that heritage. us coming back to our culture and reading the Hebrew and wearing our garments and Sabbath service and doing the work of the Lord and doing the services of the priesthood of the people of Israel is important. Now, we've gone over a couple things here just until we've gotten to this recapping our vocabulary words here. Tazaba'ah. Where did we see that? Tazaba'ah. Ba Tazaba'ah. Wath Yanawa. Armies. So the word hosts, campaign, or service, this can be used for an actual physical group of an army, a regiment, a battalion, a host, right? But can also be used as a term that represents the campaign or service of war, which would mean a campaign would be like if I think of in today's terms, Iraqi freedom was the name of the campaign, right? Operation Night Hammer, which was the B-2 bombing over Iran, that was the campaign. So the actual act itself, the event itself, is referred to as tazaba'ah, but also interchangeable within that same word. And there are other words too that can be used for host, but interchangeable with the word tazaba'ah, the word host or army can be used in the same way. The army is used for the campaign, but the same word is used for both army and campaign. That's what I'm saying. So, Ma'ataza war means fortified or siege. Ma'ataza war is where we saw right here, a strong city, a city that has a lot of defense, a city that cannot be taken over very easily, a city where even the citizens are ready to defend it. Okay, a city that has interception missile capabilities to prevent it from being hit. That's a strong city. You would consider the state of Israel a strong city of Edom that lives and has been sprouted out in the Middle East, in the land of Israel today, and across the Gaza and across different sections of what was known as Palestine has been whittled away by that strong city. In fact, it's almost like the city is like a living, breathing thing that has gotten stronger over time because it has been fortified, because it had been, and because it continues to siege, okay, or be sieged, right? Because you would consider that to be a target by a lot of radical Muslims that are in the Middle East. And so the strong city of Edom, you could think of especially the Israeli state as an example of that strong city, a strong city or a strong city state. You understand? When you think of things in ancient terms, sometimes city states, they kind of mean the same thing. Provinces within the city state or the city itself. We think of a city as just one city, like San Antonio is one city, but San Antonio is technically a conglomeration of many different provinces within San Antonio that make it a city. You know what I mean? Texas is just a very large state in general, but Texas can be considered a city with many different provinces. You understand? Because if I'm not mistaken, I don't even see the word state in the Old Testament. I have to double check that, but I know that the word city is definitely in there. Country would be another a larger form of that. So going into the last verse, give to us help or support from distress, for it is vanity, meaning for it is useless, the salvation or deliverance of man. What is this saying? It's without the Most High giving the go ahead, we will not find deliverance from our enemies. This is such a heavy scripture because we've talked about Moab, Edom, Philistia, stuff going on in the Middle East. It talks about how our people, without the Most High's guidance and without his protection, we will not find success. But on top of all of that, underlines a very important thing, and that this is referring to salvation. The very same salvation that Black, Hispanic, and Native Americans seek, that some of them say that they already have, but don't in fact actually have, because we are still under the very same people that overwhelmed the ancestors of our forefathers. And so the help and salvation and deliverance of man, we're not going to find success in trying to find salvation from a system, from salvation from a governmental political party. We're not going to find deliverance from anything if it is not the Most High. And that's why it's so important for us to come back to our culture, because it is the only way out. but it is also the only way to see and understand the entire world for what it really is. And only through the biblical lens of the Bible can you do so. And in the ISUK, we give you the right prescription to see it, the prescription for your eyesight so that you can see it clearly. You understand? Adjusting every single part. If you got astigmatism in your right eye, we adjust that with the right scriptures, give you a better understanding of the history, give you a better understanding of the prophecy. That's what's so important about these classes. And so with these Hebrew classes, we turn the understanding into overdrive by going into the Lashawan Qadash to get an even more intimate understanding with the scriptures. Let's go ahead and read verse 11. Haba la nawa I zarath ma tazar wa shawa'a ta shawa'ayata ta shawa'ayata. Interesting is right here. You see ta shawai. Yahweh Shai is something that you see in that also is tied to the word salvation or deliverance. So Yahweh Shai's name has some of the root words in here. So Tha Sha Wai Tha, and then Adam, which means man. Okay, Adam. So what he's saying is, give to us help or support from distress, for it is vanity, the salvation or deliverance from of man. So that right there would be the lesson from our previous class. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna go ahead and share the class. This will be the last time that it's gonna be on the board before I erase it. So screenshot it if you haven't got the chance to write this down. Definitely try and do that. All right. Let me see. I'll switch over. Bear with me 1 second. Give me 1 second here. I'm just making sure to share the class. And at the same time, y'all go ahead and do so as well. Share the class, like, you know what I'm saying? Follow if you haven't followed yet. We'll get started on the class here in 1 second. All right, let's go ahead and erase what we got on the board here, then we can get started with today's lesson. It's crazy, right? This is just a warm up. It's gonna take a minute. Usually whenever the class is left on the board for a number of weeks, that's where the marker really starts to get a little bit more stubborn when you try to finally remove it. Pretty sure there's some kind of spray I can use to help, but I don't have any. Almost got it, y'all. Give me 1 minute. We definitely do a lot of writing in this class, you know what I'm saying? These are a little bit more advanced classes, but when we get influx of new students, I always like to go back to the basics. And so we can always do so. And it's really just a matter of what you guys need. So don't be afraid to ask some of the questions that most people would normally ask when they first come into the school. You know, doing something simple like the alphabet, numbers, other simple vocabulary words and other phrases that are more commonly known. What what I like to do is I like to try to expand on what we already have, as far as like what our normal vocabulary usage is. We all know how to say Tuwada, Salakia, Ayandabar, you know what I mean? Kanalawakan. Those are some of the vocabulary words that are most commonly used. Are of course our greetings. Yahweh Shem Yahshai Barakatah, Yahweh Shema Atah Shem Yahshai. Those are things that we can say that with all the confidence in the world. But there's a whole language to be just as confident in. And so in order to get there, we got to put in that work. And so that's what we're going to continue to do. What we're going to be talking about today, let me get my screenshot here. We'll be going into Leviticus chapter 26. Oh, I want to see where I want to start. This might be a multi-class thing. We'll go Leviticus 26. We're going to start at verse 1 and 2. We'll probably do those two today. Leviticus chapter 26 and verse 1. If you don't have the Bible Hub app, I recommend doing so. It's a very important app because the interlinear version lines up the English right along with the Hebrew. You also get the Greek and Latin for the New Testament, but the Old Testament is completely translatable from the modern Hebrew to the Lashawan Qadash. So we just try to go with that, and as far as like getting a well-rounded understanding of the vocabulary where it's used there. So we're gonna go to Leviticus 26, and we're gonna start at verse 1. Leviticus 26 and 1. La'ah Shawah. Look, come. Allah Yahlam. Wa pasal. Wa pasal. So, and then it says wa matazaba. Wa matazaba. La'ah. This is again Leviticus 26 and 1. When you see it on the screen, it's some of the most important words of the Bible because it's actually telling you the Ten Commandments, or a reminder of the Ten Commandments right here. So definitely write this down for your records. Taqwa. Let's see. Taqwa. Yamawah. Kowan. Taqwayam. This all makes sense here in a minute. Practice pronouncing these characters. La'ah, ta'aishawa, laqam, Allah yalawan. It's like it. Allah yalam, Allah yalam. Wa pasal, wa matazaba, la'ah, taqwa yamwa, taqwa yamwa. Where's that? I hear this. Wa aban. Wa aban. Ma sak yath. me see if I can. It's the whole thing. It's okay, yes. La La Hashath. Hold on. La Hashathach Wath. All right. Shathach Wath. Root word here is to bow, which is shachah, shatach. So it's right here. Shatach wath. Okay. Ilayah. Kaya. Kaya says Anaya. Yahweh. Allah Yakam. That all of that is just verse 1. All of that. There's quite a few vocabulary words here I want to go over. I'll find a good marker here. This should be good. Let me see if I got another good one. Some of these markers, they cooperate some days better than others. That's why I always check them. All right. This right here is again Leviticus chapter 26 and verse 1. I'm going to start breaking this down. Leviticus 26 and verse 1. Let's practice by reading it. I always like to try to read these before we actually break them down and get all the scribble scrabble all over it. Hold on 1 second. I just got to check the comments real quick. Let's go ahead and read it. La'ah. We all know what that means. Telling you to not do something or no. It says Tha'ai Shawah. Lakam. Allah. It's like Allah Yalam. Allah Yalam. Wa Pasal. Wa Pasal. Word all the way on the top left. Wa Ma Tazabah. Wa Ma Tazabah. La'ah. Thaqwa Yamwa. Lakam. Wa Aban. Ma Shakayas. La'ah. La Hashathah Wath. I Laya. Kaya. My bad, y'all. Kaya. Anaya. Yahweh. Allah Haya come. Okay. So break it down in Hebrew here. Let's go ahead and get an understanding of what is being said, and we'll start to translate it. So with the first thing here, one of the most common things, and especially when you read the Ten Commandments, or at least the first of the commandments, the initial commandments, is this word no, and in this particular case, not. Same thing. Do not. Okay, that's what it's telling you. It says do not. And it's going to tell you what not to do in this verse. The I shawa. The I shawa. Aisha is the root word here. I sha. Technically, it's this right here. This is the root word. Okay. That's the part of it that is that's the actual vocabulary word. And so that word means to accomplish or to bear or to bring forth. Okay. So why is it saying that? Because it's saying not you shall make. The root word here is make. What did we just got through saying? It can mean a couple things. It can mean to bring forth, to accomplish, to commit, to fashion, to appoint, to bestow. These are all things that you could use. Thou shalt not. What's a good one that ties right in with what we're talking about? Thou shalt not fashion. Let's not use fashion. Accomplish, create. Yeah, create. So the word make is Aisha. Aisha. Normally there's a ha at the end of it, but it's saying you shall not make. That's why there's a la in front of it. So the Aishawa. Not that you shall make. And then it says lakam. Lakam means for yourselves. The root word here, actually, there is no root word for that. It just means for yourselves. La'ah, the Aishawa, lakam. Allah yalam. This is an important one right here. Allah yalam. This is H457. Make sure to write this in your vocabulary. We're going to write this vocabulary word on the board here. This is idols. Idol. Idols. H457. We're going to write that over here. It's going to be this word right here. H457. Idol. That is Allah. What's the root word? Allah Yah. Allah Yah. Notice that Allah is in there. Why is this mentioned in the Bible? Because again, people give power to all sorts of things that are not the Most High. It goes into further detail in this particular precept how people do this by manifesting an image, a sculpture, a statue, something that gives life to something that makes it a tangible thing. We're not going to be worshiping the Most High as a tangible being. You understand? We'll worship him as the God of creating everything, not something that is created. That would be trying to minimize the Most High to something that is just a fraction of what it is that he's created, and rather than give him the credit of everything. So it's not a smart move. Would not recommend that. So when you come over here, we read the word idols. Is the root word here is Allah Yah. Allah Yah. is technically it's this right here. Allah yalam. So it's actually making it plural because it's adding the ma at the end. Allah yalam. Technically, you could also say Allah yalal yum at the end. So there could be a ya at the end. That would be perfectly fine grammatical wise. But this is how I have it in the interlinear. So we're just going to leave it as it is. We're not going to argue with it. Wa pasal. Wa pasal. It says neither a carved image. The word pasal is this portion right here. And this is H6459 pasal, which means also idol. But it refers to it as a carved image. Carved image. Why is this something that we bringing up? The Most High sees this happening on the world today. When you go to the Catholic Church, when you go to the Christian church, a lot of times they'll even have that. I don't know if it's like some kind of wax figure, statue, something that's carven, it's made out of something, and it's supposed to resemble what they believe to be Jesus Christ or what they believe to be Mother Mary. And these are things that people literally go up and pray to. And they say, oh, well, it's not idolatry. Yes, the hell it is, because it's literally what you're doing. You're not supposed to do that. And you have a Christmas tree in your house, and you don't know that it actually represents Nimrod, which is the Babylonian king, and you kneel under it to put gifts to the tree. It becomes a thing that you consider to be normal, that is in practice, in actuality, a form of worship to another being. That's what's ridiculous, is that because of traditions of men, our people have been so far led astray, they don't know right from left. They don't know what idolatry is versus what it isn't. And so we get so carried away in so many different things. You ever watch, I like to bring this up too, because it's almost damn near at the point where people's possessions become what they have their faith in. Somebody that does streaming, they may stream a lot of video games, right? They may have a lot of figurines on the walls from the collector's editions from all the video games that they've purchased. A lot of times those collector's editions come with a carved image. This is, of course, being loosely understanding with it. I'm not telling you that they're praying to these things. What I'm saying, though, is that they put so much credence and life into something that isn't actually real, that it's prioritized in their life over serving the Most High. That's why you got to be careful with that, because even little kids, they can get carried away with the little Spider-Man action figure that they got over here, pretending like it's a real thing. Of course, it is entertainment, but at some point, it becomes an obsession. That obsession can lead to idolatry. You have to be careful not to fall into that. The Most High is saying, don't do that. It would be wise to not deal with those things because they wouldn't affect you at all if you take it out of the equation. You know what I'm saying? So it's always wise to just listen to what the Bible says rather than to try to do things according to your own mind. Okay? And imagery and movies and things like that, people give so much life to all these different things. A lot of times the best forms of art are things that imitate life, right? As the saying goes, art imitates life. Those are the things that get the most attention because they're just reflecting what reality is. And those are things that we can relate to a lot easier. And so people tend to flock towards those things quite a bit often more so. But then you get into movies that deal with fantasy and all these different things. And before you know it, people have posters and action figurines of fictional characters that are all spread throughout their houses and their walls, and damn near it's almost like they have a shrine, a room that's just a shrine for those things if they get really too carried away. But this is what you see on the planet today. You don't see people actually worshiping the Most High in truth, even in religion that has fallen into those practices. So people are subconsciously being trained to do that for a lot of things in their life. And there's no surprise when they see it that their religions don't work out for them as far as making them disciplined against their flesh. You have to consistently fight against it, but you have to also be aware of the distractions that can make you weak to those things. Okay? Moving forward, it says, wa ma tazabah, and a sacred pillar. So what it's saying here is ma tazabah and matazabah is saying something stationed, column. So it's just saying a pillar. And a pillar. That's what that's saying. Pillar. That's the name there. We'll go ahead and get this one too. This was H6459. And this is carved image. It also means idol. And this is pasal. Pasal. La'ah. Taquayamwa. 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 Quawam is the word used. Osaki. Yeah, quawam is what's used to stand up or to rise. So this is actually referring to the exaltation of something. Okay, it says don't rear up. Rear up means to stand it up or to lift up. So it's saying don't or not. This is saying don't, basically. All right. And then it's saying don't. It says ta qua yamwa. Don't you rear up or don't lift up. Lifting up is the part where this is referring to qua yum. Quawum is the root word, but qua yum is how it's used here. Lakam, we actually saw this before. This is the same thing for yourselves. For yourselves. Wa'aban. 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 Aban is the root word. Wa just means and. Okay. Aban means stone. Don't lift up for yourself and a stone. So don't be setting up statues, people idolize. There's people that have the dream of going to the NBA. They wake up every day and they idolize somebody like Michael Jordan. They have an aspiration to want to be like Mike. I saw you was trading her on the parallel parking. Did she do good?
Yeah.
On time Christ. Her hair looked pretty cool, by the way. I like the way she had her hair.
All right.
So yeah, what it's saying is that don't lift up for yourself a stone. Okay, because again, it's a distraction from worshiping the Lord. When you start prioritizing things that you see to have power, the things that have influence over you, you have to really analyze whether it leads you down a spiritual path of righteousness or not, or if it distracts you from your culture. We have to constantly move according to what we see and knowing what's wrong and what's right. We have to look at what's going to divert us from that straight and narrow path. And so when we was bringing up the Michael Jordan example, there's statues of Michael Jordan. There's statues of famous figurines. Heck, I think there's even one of Rocky Balboa in Philadelphia just from the scene of the Rocky movie. People go over there, they run up the stairs like they're doing a training montage, and they do this thing right here. It's like, okay, it's just a small gesture, right? But I mean, there's a lot more to it than just that. The Statue of Liberty technically was supposed to be a black woman. What Why is it that the Statue of Liberty being a black woman is something that's been exalted all these years while black people are still being oppressed? It's just a gesture. It doesn't represent anything that actually has any weight behind it. That's what a lot of these things are. We can't get distracted by them. Okay. I believe it was provided to the United States from France, if I'm not mistaken, and that it was originally a different color. Wa'aban ma shakayath. Ma shakayath. That word right there, ma shakayath, is engraved. Engraved. The root word here, it's the whole thing. Ma shakayath. It's the whole joint right here. Take a second to look at the board. Give me one moment. Make sure to write down what we got on the screen. Catch up if you haven't already. Okay. Let's see. So what we have so far is la'ah, ba'aishawa, la'kam, ala yalam, wa pasal, wa matazaba, la'ah, ta kwayamwa, la'kam, wa aban, ma shakayath, la'ah. So let's finish this up here. We're saying do not or not. Laha shathakwa. Laha shathakwa. What is this saying? Laha shathakwa means do not bow down or to bow down. With the root word being, let's see. What is that? I don't know why. Ba'arat tazakam. I just had to add those right there. We'll skip those when I was doing the translation. But no sweat. Oh, this has to be low. Okay. Ra tazakam. Okay, so yeah, quick part was just here. So it says, do not set up in your land. Right here it says in your land. Ba'aratazakam. There's a root word right here is arataza. That's the root word right there for in your land. To bow down. When you go to that word right there, it's telling you shakha. Shakha. Shakha is the way that it's used in its sentence right here. Some of the words are kind of switched around. Sometimes you see that in the Hebrew, but that's mainly a modern Hebrew thing. Usually, my rule of thumb is if you know the root word and you pronounce the root word with the other things around it, that's grammatically correct. That's the most close to form version of it without all these rules being added in that switches things around. You understand? Ba ratazakam la ha shathak wath. La ha shathak wath. La ha shathak wath. Okay, now coming in right here. Let's see. La ha shathak. I la yah. I la yah. To not bow down to it. Now, one of the reasons why we bring it, hold on, let me get the root word here. Ow. Ow. And then kaya will be the next, which means for. And that's just the root word right there. Anaya, which means I. Anaya. The Most High is telling you his name, I Yahweh. And then it says, your God, Allah Hayakam, Allah Hayakam, which is your God. Allah Hayah, Yahweh, Aniyah. I believe it's the whole phrase. Yeah. It's Leviticus chapter 26 and verse 1. We're going to read it in the Hebrew. We're going to recap it in the English. So it says, La'ah, the Aishawa, La'kam, ala yalam, wa hasal, wa matazaba, La'ah, taqwayamwa, La'kam, wa aban, ma shakayas, La'ah, tathanawa, ba aratazakam, la ha shathakwa, al ya kaya anya Yahweh Allahayakam. What the Most High is saying here is, you shall not make for yourselves idols or an idol of carved image and a pillar. You shall not lift up for yourselves a stone that is engraved. You shall not set up in your land to bow down to it. For I, Yahweh, am your God. God's ordering you to do something, you have to do it. There's no getting around it. There's no trying to make an excuse for it. That's not going to be any excuses when the Most High rains judgment on the globe for the mistakes that we continuously make in our pride, in our arrogance, in our ignorance. Now is not the time to be ignorant about anything. Now is the time for us to spread the truth like a weapon to help us fight against our ignorances, so that we can have everything that we need to fight against our flaws. So when the Most High is clearly telling us throughout all these scriptures, especially this particular verse right here, this is the foundation of everything, of all the other laws that come after that, because the priority has to be the Most High. That's what he's telling you. When we start to prioritize all the images of the world, all of the idols and the pop stars and the musicians and the people that are just honestly a distraction, all of that takes us away from the mission. The mission doesn't get complete until we all lock in to our culture. And so when the ISUK became the commanding general Hana, we find it most important to focus on the culture and the heritage of the ancients, those that we come from, those that we're awakening to finally return to form. We're actually coming back to that now so that we can serve the Most High in righteousness and in truth in these days. There's more on these verses that I want to go over, but this is just the first verse of many verses that I want to cover in this chapter. We're going to be going further into detail on the vocabulary. We're going to leave this vocabulary here, and we're just going to add on to this in our upcoming classes. But there's some very important implications of why I brought us over to this particular chapter, especially after recapping the verses that we went over in the previous class where we had been talking about Edom and Moab and the Most High being with us and our armies when we go out to commit our warfare. You understand? So that's what we got going on with that. And so make sure to lock in with these classes, share the classes, like, subscribe. If you're on YouTube, bookmark these classes, create playlists of these things. You understand? It's important to lock in and get as much studying as possible while there is time, while we have airwaves to speak over. You understand? We don't know how much time we have left, but we got to make sure to make the best of that time that we do during this time of mercy that the Most High is giving us so that we can learn it. So with that, this is the ISUK that started out of 1 West, 125th Street, Harlem, New York in 1969 under Commanding General Yohana. Shalom, Yahweh Hashem Yahushua Barakatam to all the brothers. And Shalom, Yahal Shamar Atan Hashem Yahushua to all the sisters. Shalom. You got a copy, y'all?